In this video, we'll be learning about sets using various methods. So let's start off with this first problem. Consider the set of letters in the word success. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, you use roster method whenever you have a small amount of elements in your set. So for example, I would use roster method if I wanted to write the set of numbers in between 1 and 5. So a number that's in between 1 and 5 would be 2, 3, and 4. So roster method is used whenever you have a small amount of elements. Now set builder notation is going to be whenever you have a huge number of elements or you have an infinite amount of elements in your set. So for example, if I wanted to write the set where I represent all even numbers, I would have to write that in set builder notation because there's infinite even numbers. So I have a variable to denote that this variable represents every element in the set. So I'm going to say x is our variable that's going to represent all elements in the set. And then we have a condition that follows. So I'm going to say x is an even number. So that's what set builder notation is and roster method. Now for this problem, we're trying to write the set to represent all letters in the word success. So in success we have an S, a U, a C, and an E. So it's only 4 letters. We can write that one by one if we wanted to. So that means that the best way to represent this set is going to be roster method, since it's such a small amount of elements in our set. So that's going to be your answer. So for the second problem, it says consider the collection of all colors in the visible spectrum. Determine the best way to represent this set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, the colors in the visible spectrum are colors we can see. Now, you have your main colors like red, blue, orange, yellow, purple, brown, black, white, and so on. But there's also different shades of each color. So there is a huge amount of elements in our set. There's many colors we can see with our eyes. So since we have such a large amount of elements in our set, the best way to represent this set would be set builder notation. And that's going to be your answer. So for this third problem, it says consider the set of all animals that are both mammals and birds. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. So mammals and birds are not the same thing. A bird is not a mammal, and a mammal can't be a bird. The reason why is because a mammal has either hair or fur. A bird has neither of those. A bird has feathers. So that's just one simple way to determine if a bird is a mammal or not. Now there's much more that goes into it, but I'm just briefly explaining it. So since our elements are going to be animals that are both mammals and birds, we have to include that in our set, but no mammal is a bird and no bird is a mammal. So how do we represent that? So anytime we have no elements in our set, we can call it the empty set. And that's going to be your answer. Even though it didn't say it in the problem, it's a trick question. So I had to throw that in there. Now for this fourth problem, it says consider the set of even prime numbers. Determine the best way to represent this set using either the roster method or set builder notation. So our elements in our set are going to be even prime numbers. Now there are many even prime numbers. We can start from 2, and then we have to skip 4 because 4 is not prime. 6 is also not prime. 8 is not also prime. So since it's such a small amount, you can see a pattern. If we do 8 and then 10, 10 is not prime, 12 is not prime, 24 is not prime, 26 is not prime, 28 is not prime. So we only have one element in our set, which is just 2. So since we have only one element in our set, we know that we need to use roster method because it's such a small amount. We can just list all the even prime numbers out, which there's only one. So the answer here is going to be roster method. And that's going to be your answer. So for this fifth problem, it says consider the set of main characters in this TV show Friends who live in Monica's apartment. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, if you watch the TV show Friends, you would know that there's not many characters that live in Monica's apartment. It's not a whole bunch of characters, and it's not an infinite amount of characters. So it's a small amount of characters who live in Monica's apartment. So since we know that information, we know that the best way to represent the set is roster method. And that's going to be your answer. Now, for the sixth problem, it says consider the set of all integers. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. So an integer is going to be a whole number, whether that's positive or negative or zero. So if it's a negative, positive, or zero, that is a infinite amount of numbers. It goes all the way to negative infinity and positive infinity. So since we know that there's an infinite amount of elements in our set, the best way to represent the set would be set builder notation. And that's going to be your answer. So for the seventh problem, it says consider the set of penguins that live in the Arctic. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, your penguins that live in the Arctic, there's going to be a whole bunch of them. Or at least for now, there will be. So, since there is a big amount of elements in our set, the best way to represent this set would be set builder notation. So that's going to be your answer. Now, for this eighth problem, it says consider the set of novels written by Agatha Christie. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, Agatha Christie has written many novels. And if you go Google it or search it up, it is a lot of novels. So since our elements are going to be a lot or a big amount, we know that we need to use set builder notation to best represent the set. So that's going to be your answer. So for this ninth problem, it says consider the set of films directed by Christopher Nolan. Determine the best way to represent this set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, Christopher Nolan has directed so many movies, it's a large amount. So knowing this information, we know that we want to use set builder notation to best represent the set, since we have a large amount of elements in our set. So that's going to be your answer. So for this 10th problem, it says consider the set of 5 weekdays. Determine the best way to represent the set using either the roster method or set builder notation. Now, our elements in our set are going to be our 5 weekdays. So there's only 5 elements in our set. Now, since it's such a small amount to where we can write each element one by one, we know that the best way to represent the set would be roster method. And that's going to be your answer.